Don't get me wrong. Like, hard pass. I know hindsight's 20/20, but like, I'm okay not having another Malik McDowell, but that's not what this decision is. And to say, oh, you're facing the decision about taking another Malik McDowell does a disservice to John Schneider's decision and the difficulty that he's going to have to make. This isn't, do you want Malik McDowell? This is, do you want Aaron Donald with character concerns? Mm-hmm. That question is a lot harder to answer. And for some people, they might say, character concerns are always an X for me. No, I don't want them. For others, to think, do you want Aaron Donald with some red flags? If you want to win a Super Bowl, that question becomes tempting. Yeah. That question becomes tough, and that suddenly becomes something where instead of saying no, you're going, well, what are the red flags?
Well, and it's hard for us because we don't really know how much how big the character concerns are.
Yes.
It's one thing if it was all known. I'm not necessarily troubled by his incident with the racing. I'm not saying that it wasn't a horrible thing, but that doesn't necessarily, to me, speak to his character. It speaks to some dumb decision-making, by the way, that I'm guilty of myself, but it doesn't necessarily tell me he's a bad guy. The fact that he was overweight and screwed up his pro day a few weeks later tells me that maybe he was in a bad spot mentally afterwards.
So my new friend Chip also talked about that. Do you want to know what he said?
Yes.
Okay. He said that one of the knocks on Jalen Carter, that there's one knock that he thinks isn't true and one that is.
Okay.
The one that isn't true to him is Jalen Carter takes plays off. He's like, at all times, in every game, every snap that he's out there, you know exactly where he is, period.
Okay.
Doesn't think he takes plays off.
Good.
However, when it comes to his pro day, he said that was one of the knocks on him is he gains weight. It's hard for him to manage his weight. He likes to eat. So
I can relate to that as well.
Like that's what I said.
I can absolutely relate to that.
Same.
I also like to eat.
Ditto.
I mean, I'm not going to Pizza Hut every day like you. Yeah. I know you're a big Pizza Hut person.
Well, both Jalen and I, elite athletes. However, I am not fighting to be drafted this year. My athleticism is behind me.
But look, I've never been involved in a situation where I was, in some way feeling responsible for people's deaths. But I'm going to guess I probably wouldn't have the best food management and the aftermath of that either.
No, and that's what Bump and I had been talking about. So the reason we've been talking about Jalen Carter a ton because he is the most frequently mocked player to Seattle. By far. Like, it is looking like a very real possibility Jalen Carter is a Seahawk in a month. Less than a month, actually, in 2 weeks. So that's why we keep talking about Jalen Carter, right? Is like, hey, this is the most important decision John Schneider will ever make. One of them. I would say deciding to trade Russell Wilson is probably up there, but what to do at number 5, the highest pick John has ever had, right? That's a huge decision. And you're not playing with house money. This is a real gamble you're taking on your franchise. And by the way, you mess this up, your career as a GM is in trouble too.
See, I don't know that I agree with that. I kind of feel a little differently on that one.
Well, I think it's more tied to picking quarterbacks. But if you have all this capital and you don't find a way to win without Russell Wilson,
I think that the number 5 pick is house money. That's the reason
what?
I do.
Thank you, Stacy.
I think it's house money.
How is it house money?
You're not supposed to have it.
Yeah, but you paid for it.
But not really.
But what do you mean you didn't really pay for it?
You paid for a first rounder that you thought was going to be in the 20s.
You paid for it.
You paid for a first rounder.
No, listen.
And then you got lucky.
The sacrifice that you made was to part ways with a franchise quarterback. Say what you will about Russell Wilson. I know everyone's thinking, great, good riddance, get rid of Russell. Do you think you've answered that? Who's your quarterback for the next 10 years?
The
answer is I don't know. You haven't answered it.
You didn't think it was going to be the number 5 pick when you sent it away.
And yet it is. And isn't that great?
Yes, it's house money. Somebody gave you this pick that you weren't supposed to have.
But that doesn't mean that it's a decision that it's like, you can take a risk. You can go either way.
I feel like I can. I wasn't even supposed to have this pick. Screw it.
But that's not how.
I'm going to bring in somebody with the high. I want the highest upside
Mike,
available.
I'm so sorry. This is an awful opinion. I simply cannot co-sign.
Wow.
Does anyone agree?
You're ruining 2 days in a row.
Thank you, Justin, for being the voice of reason. This is not playing with house. This is not like, oh my God, you guys, I just found $20 on the street. This is, I traded away a franchise quarterback.
Yeah.
And I made a huge gamble, and as a result, I got the number 5 pick.
It's not quite that. It's in between those two things. You're right. It's not just found money. It is, I traded away something, and I thought I was going to get $20 for it, and instead I got $100. right? I sold this for what I thought was going to be a $20 price, and somebody accidentally gave me $100. I've got 80 extra
Okay, but
bucks
how about this
that
angle?
are found money.
How about this then?
I'm willing to go spend it to try to get better.
If you're not going to use it to find your franchise quarterback of the future and you're just going to decide to roll with Geno, doesn't it become even more important that you hit on the best defensive player there that isn't going to mess things up?
It becomes important that I get something great. I want to be as great as possible. It's why I'm willing to take a risk with number 5 on Anthony Richardson, who might also bust. You could make me an argument that the bust potential of Anthony Richardson is higher than it is for Jalen Carter.
Play-wise, yes.
100%, or just overall, that he doesn't succeed.
Well, his position's harder.
His position's harder. He's played it less. He doesn't have the same film, etc. But the upside is equally as high as it would be for Jalen Carter. I'm just willing to be a little more risky with this number 5 pick than I would with some others because I've never been in this spot before and I was never really supposed to be there.
I don't ever want you to spend my money.
I don't think there's much risk of that.